Hello, everyone. I would like to review the poetry of William Wordsworth, which I have now finished the entire selective readings. And I really love the Romantic poets because they, of course, wrote a lot about nature and they evoked a lot of vivid imagery, a lot of passionate imagery. And Wordsworth was very good at that because he thought that one, again, could achieve aesthetic beauty through writing about poetry and nature. And again, the Romantics though focused less on reason and more on emotion. The Romanticism was basically a reaction to the Enlightenment, which was more about reason. We can know everything through reason, but there was a limit to that the Romantics understood, especially after the French Revolution and what happened with that. They realized that reason can only take one so far because if uh, if reason isn't ultimately tempered with compassion, that ultimately leads to tyranny because through reason alone one cannot get any kind of objective morality because all reason can really show is if you want to achieve something, well, this is the rational way to go about doing it. It can't tell you what's right or what's wrong. And so, because of that, the Romantics tried to focus more. Now, of course, there has to be a balance because Romanticism without reason that could also lead to a lot of chaos if one's just going off of their emotional instincts. So, reason and emotion, Romanticism have to go together. And of course, a lot of times, if someone's operating just purely off of reason, then they will often not notice the fact that they're also operating off of emotion a great deal, even if they don't realize it. So, Romanticism is about being in tune with your emotions and about appreciating beauty in nature or in humanity through your own sensory experience. And Wordsworth did that perhaps better than any other person. Of course, he lived during the late 18th century, early 19th century, and of course, he lived to be 80 years old. He actually outlived most of the younger poets that preceded him because he viewed poetry more as an art form and not as a means to engage in debaucherous behavior. Because to me, the purest of romantics gets their emotional satisfaction through their work. They don't try to channel immoral debauchery and put that in their work, which Byron and people like Byron and Shelley were more guilty of that. And not that they didn't write good poetry, they did, but their approaches were different in that regard. Which is why I tend to prefer Wordsworth more, even though I think Byron was a brilliant poet as well. Um, Shelley, I think, was probably the least competent because maybe not in terms. I haven't actually read as Shelley as much, so I don't want to say. But in terms of his worldview, he had more of a like Byron was more consistent with his work with his kind of more nihilistic kind of worldview, whereas Shelley kind of had this idealistic dream of humanity, which wasn't really consistent with his overall philosophical worldview. But anyway, my favorite poem, though, in from Wordsworth is called "She Was a Phantom of Delight," which actually isn't um, a poem primarily describing nature. He's actually describing his wife in this poem. But I thought I would read it to you because it's probably my favorite out of all the poems that I've read. She was a phantom of delight. She was a phantom of delight when she first gleamed upon my sight, a lovely apparition sent to be a moment's ornament. Her eyes as stars of twilight fair, like twilight's too her dusky hair, but all things else about her drawn from Maytime in the cheerful dawn, a dancing shape, an image gay, to haunt, to startle, and waylay. I saw her upon a nearer view, a spirit yet a woman too, her household motions light and free, and steps of virgin liberty. A countenance in which did meet sweet records, promises as sweet, a creature too bright or good for human nature's daily food. For transient sorrow, simple wiles, praise, blame, love, kisses, tears, and smiles. And now I see, with eye serene, the very pulse of the machine, a, a being breathing thoughtful breath, a traveler betwixt life and death. The reason firm, the temperate will, endurance, foresight, strength, and skill, perfect woman nobly planned, to warn, to comfort, and command, and yet a spirit still and bright with something of an angel light. Now, of course, the reason I like this poem is because Wordsworth is showing his intense emotion and passion for his wife. And of course, one of the ways that one can do that is by comparing things like human beauty to the beauty of nature and combining those in a way that almost makes the human seem divine, ethereal. And I think that Wordsworth achieved that here. And his poems, though, they have a sense of relaxation about them that you can get lost in his narrative. Of course, he wrote some other poems, like if I can think of one that was, I can't remember the name of it. What was it? It's one of the earlier ones. The Ruined Cottage, which was a kind of a gothic. Wordsworth could be gothic when he wanted to be. So he wrote things like the Ruined Cottage, which was about a woman waiting for her husband to return, who left her and had joined the army, but he never did, and how she slowly wastes away. And so I love how romanticism can be combined with a kind of Gothic style where you can combine romance and death in a very profound way. And I think that Wordsworth, he didn't reach the pinnacle of that, but he definitely set the bar for others, other writers to aspire to and rise to. So, for example, with Poe, who took that, I think, to its logical conclusion, and people like Hawthorne as well. So you can definitely see how Wordsworth, who was active primarily, even though he lived, I think, to 1840 or 50, who was primarily active in the early 19th century. You can see how he inspired other writers like Poe, and to an extent Dickens as well, in the mid 19th century. So if you're someone who reads a lot of let's say Victorian literature, if you want to know who those writers read, then you should definitely read William Wordsworth.